Hi Sobat UNNES, welcome to In Conversation. Today we have a very special guest. So I'm with Associate Professor Seck Tan from Singapore Institute of Technology. UNNES in Conversation. Dr. Seck Tan joins us to discuss his book Rethinking, Sustainable Development, Economic Integration and Public Policy, published by Routledge. This book demonstrates falsified economic performance of global economies when the environment is not recognized as a capital and when the ecosystem is overlooked towards sustainable development. He argues, with reference to environmental accounting literature, that environmental capital must form an integral component of economic measurements. The book demonstrates how environmental capital can be measured with reference to select OECD countries and provides methodology for analyzing how macroeconomic goals are related to the steady-state economy. Dr. Seck Tan is an associate professor at the Singapore Institute of Technology. He researches on environmental economics with reference to valuation of environmental goods and services. Seck is an applied economist with broad research interests in policy analysis and recommendation towards sustainable development. He is also adjunct professor of the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Negeri Semarang. So, hi, Dr. Seck, how are you today?
Hello. I'm good. Thank
Great.
you, Sandy.
Yeah.
Thanks for having this conversation.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have a discussion with you today related to your recent book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Great.
but before that, maybe you can explain about your activity here in Semarang
Okay.
as an adjunct professor.
Yeah, so as of yesterday or today, we've done some work in terms of a guest lecture. And at the same time, we've also done some discussion with the Dean and the Vice Dean in terms of some initiatives pertaining to research as well as to student activities. So it's been very fruitful so far. And now we are on to this conversation that we are having with you right now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So congratulations on your newer book.
Yeah.
Entitled Rethinking
Sustainable
Sustainability
Development. Yeah.
So maybe where did the idea for the book come from?
So, it's rethinking sustainable development, integrating economics and public policy. So the idea about sustainable development is being defined and explained and being understood by different parties in many ways. So I have taken a different step and approach in trying to integrate the economic element as well as the policy side of explanation into this book. Where this came about, I guess it would date back to easily 4-5 years ago. This idea was proposed by the publisher's editor, and I was actually I was in Norway at that time. I was in Oslo for a conference and a public speech, public sharing as well, when an email came. And I was very pleased and very happy to receive this email, and she said, would you consider writing a book given with the prior publications that I had. So that was how we came about. I worked with the editor of the publisher, and then that's how we came about with this idea.
Yeah, and then you are the solo author for this book, yeah?
Yes, I'm the sole author of this book.
Okay, so Seck, why sustainability development now becomes very important in today's business world?
So the book has taken a perspective from a macroeconomic level. So which means it looks at policy making, looks at stabilizing an economy, and more importantly, what it impacts on the policy. So these three key things. So when we filter down to the businesses, right? So if we think about it in a different lens, businesses are made of individuals like yourself and myself and yourself. So I guess what it means is that businesses would eventually be impacted by what I do, what you do, and what the audiences would do, right? So it belongs to all of us. But if we take the perspective of the business, I mean, businesses are out to churn profits, survival, market share, whatnot. I guess ultimately what it would mean to them is how much money would I make? How much more transaction would I lose, for instance? And what does this mean to my market share or my customers? So this is hopefully something that, this explanation of what this means in terms of sustainable development would imply and implicate to the decision making of the businesses.
And then how have you seen the conversation about the sustainable development so far?
Well, sustainable development is not a new term. It's been around for easily a good 100 and odd years. It's been around, except that the vocabulary really has been used in different manner. So the phrase that it's been used in different contexts has evolved. And it has only been in the last 50 to 60 years that this has come to the fore. And it wasn't until 1987 when sustainable development was officially defined in the literature, in the academic literature. So it has come a long way. So where it has come and what it is now, it has obviously taken many different mutations. But the understanding remains is that we cannot consume more than what we wish to, lest we have nothing left for the future.
Do you have any kind of like a real example from your book, in terms of the case study? Maybe we can learn from the best practice of,
the economies,
one of the examples,
policies.
the economy policy.
Well, I guess the good itself, right? Because if we talk about sustainable development, what it means is that we want to make sure that we do not extract more resources that we can. And even if we do, we have to appreciate that it is the environment that we are polluting. And as a result, we have to do something to reinvest or to maintain the environment, right? So if we are going to do something eventually, how do we do it? We can't try to measure or value, for instance, pocket of air. I mean, I can't ask you, Sandy, to stop breathing and I'll pay you some money. I can't do that because this air is free. I cannot stop you from breathing. And when you take away that one breath, it doesn't mean that there is one less for me. So it's impossible. And this is the challenge when we talk about the environment and the climate, because the emissions go out there and there's no valuation. So when there's no valuation, there's no price point. When there's no price point, it makes it difficult for policymakers and decisions to be made. So what that would mean is that it's going to be difficult. But it is not difficult if all of us play our part. In other words, we can have a say in terms of how we want to protect the environment. We can have a say in terms of how we wish to maintain it and to prolong it for the future.
So when we talk about our part, to initiate or maybe to embrace, to support the sustainable development movement. So what we can do, because we are talking in the academic community, with the lecturers, professors, and also the students. So what is your recommendation, for us to take a part actively in terms of dealing with the sustainable development?
I guess because the good itself, clean air, let's argument's sake, let's put it this way, that belongs to everyone, right? So all of us will have a part to play. So if you want to be very specific, I guess down to each of our own actions and behavior, as what we do, we are consumers, right? We are consumers of durable goods, for instance. If we are more environmentally friendly, for instance, we can choose to consume green goods. We can choose to look at identification of producers who use environmental friendly resources, who use green resources that would harm the environment less, so that we are also consuming in a responsible fashion. So I guess there's a lot of things to do. It's difficult. Habits are hard to break. We can't change things overnight, unfortunately. I think what we can do is, firstly, we need to educate. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, educate from the young, through everyone in the business world, into the decision makers that this is something that we have to start doing, even if it costs a little bit more. So I think education is key. There is currently a resort development that is happening on the northern side of the island. All right, and it is. When you have a time in the future, Sandy, you should visit, right? Because this is a eco theme park where they have actually accumulated all of the theme parks in Singapore, the bird park, the zoo, and the night safari into one location, right? And what has happened is this development has gone through some form of environmental impact assessment, right? So environmental impact assessment is a way for stakeholders and the public to provide their inputs to how much an action would impact and affect the environment. So in this case, documentation has to be provided.
Yeah.
Time and openings and allowance for the public to offer their views would have to be offered. Subsequently, the stakeholders, taking on board all of these comments and feedback, they would then decide what sort of mitigation measures they would have to take. Because clearly, you are disturbing the biodiversity, right? There are a wide range of biodiversity in Singapore. It's an island, yes, but it has natural biodiversity in abundance. So if we want to make sure that we don't disrupt it so much, we have to look at the official assessment, and then we have to look at the mitigation measures that we can recommend. And then of course, back to what we had discussed earlier, if it's a business, it's down to cost benefit, right? How much do we have to pay? How much do we then get in return? Or how much do we save, but how much do we then get less of in terms of the benefits, for instance? So these are the analysis that we have to undertake before we decide the final decision. So I think, if you were to ask me in an urban setting, and this has come a long way, Singapore has come a long way. It has adopted and embraced the fact that public needs to be involved in the consultation, formalized with an environmental impact assessment, and then all the stakeholders come together to look at measures that can minimize the impact to the ecosystem.
Yeah, Seck, I believe that we need a collective commitment, right? Not only from the corporation itself, but also from the government, the other stakeholders, to really implement the sustainable development initiative or programs publicly. So based on your findings on your book, maybe you can share with us like what kind of recommendation that you suggest to the government in terms of the policy making process.
I guess I'll probably raise two key points, right? Because every different policy maker and different governments would have their own take on the understanding of it. In the study that I looked at the OECD economies. So for instance, if we were to look at Australia, right, it's a commodity-based, it's a resource-rich, mineral-based economy. And what we have noticed is that over time, over the last 30 years, it has increased its utilization of environment as a capital, right? So if the environment as a capital is being depleted, then clearly there would be less of it available for production and to drive economic growth. So if that being the case, well, how do we protect it? How do we make sure that there is enough to go around in the future? I guess if we were to involve a few ways, right, we can decide that it's from the top down, right? There must be some form of responsibility or understanding that any actions, any initiatives need to take the environment as a consideration. That's top down, for instance, and then from the bottom up, public, the society. We will need to come together and have a common understanding to say, look, it is a luxury that we have a breath of fresh air today. How do we make sure that this breath of fresh air is available for our younger ones, for our future generations? So I think, if we put the top down and the bottom up together, and then get involved also the private entities, which were the businesses that you had first started off with this conversation. We need to get all parties in place and then coupled with education and understanding. I think we need a lot of patience with this, but we don't have a lot of time, so we have to then hurry and as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on your research,
Yeah.
I mean, from your book, like, what kind of a challenge is faced by the corporation, let's say, or maybe the other elements, government, or maybe the public themselves, you know,
Yeah.
in respect to implementation of the sustainable development?
Yeah. I think if we were to look at challenge, I think the most important one is how do we make decisions? Because if we don't have the price point, if we don't have a value, it's very hard to make a decision. So it is a challenge because the good itself cannot be measured easily, right? So we've done some work over the last couple of years in terms of making an attempt to measure this, right? But the measurement can be debatable.
Yeah.
But it offers a consensus in terms of how this can be calculated, loosely calculated, and what it means to the wider economy. And when that happens, hopefully that will offer some form of grounding for policymakers to make a decision. So that's number one. Now, number two is, I think on the international arena, the United Nations, as well as the World Bank, they have already done several studies in terms of how we can price, for instance, carbon dioxide emissions. So per ton of carbon dioxide emissions, how much does that incur to businesses or to the economy, right? So with things like that, this can then eventually be used to cost down to the fact of analysis if we decide to run a cost benefit. That would help with decision making. And then the last bit, I guess, is individuals and community, right? Society per se. So I mentioned earlier that I was in Oslo giving a talk to the civil unions from parts of the world in trying to explain to them what policy co-creation and policy co-production is all about. So what, in a nutshell, what that means is getting involved the public's input and getting involved the public's energy as well as capital when we implement certain form of policy in the sphere of environmental as a capital.
Yeah.
So if you want to go into the specifics, I think education remains the key. Do we educate from the young? Do we educate from the tertiary students? Do we educate the business decision makers? Do we educate the policy makers?
Yeah.
Right? I think all of this, we need to start the work. And I've witnessed and I've heard as well that these are going at different speed, different pace, but it is happening at different levels of the society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific elements or area that we really need to focus on? You know, because I believe that when we talk about sustainable development is a very broad spectrum of, area, right? So us here,
Yeah.
UNNES, we are very proud because we have a vision as a world reputable university with conservation inside.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about sustainability, it's really echoing us here at UNNES.
Yeah.
So do you have any specific items, specifically for universities in Indonesia or maybe, in UNNES,
Yeah.
to really catch up or accelerate the sustainable development program or initiatives?
Well, I wouldn't dare say to offer any recommendations
Yeah.
or to even suggest that what I'm going to say is goal.
Yeah.
But I think from what I witnessed around the world and from what I witnessed yesterday on a mini tour around the UNNES campus, I think you're already doing many things that are right. I'll go down to the basics, right? You've got someone clearing out the leaves on the ground,
Yeah.
right? And these leaves are not chucked away somewhere. I witnessed that these leaves are actually being held up at certain spots around the campus. And I actually love this campus because you have lots of space and greens. Of course, we understand that, ASEAN countries, we are in a temperate climate, where we don't have the four seasons. the trees and the biodiversity needs to withstand the heat and the humidity. So what I've witnessed is that the waste, the leaves are being nicely tucked away in the corner for them to be natural return into the land, and then subsequently gets back into the soil, and then it becomes nutrients for the flora and the fauna. So I think little things like that, because it depends on the culture, wouldn't it? If it's the culture that this is what we grew up with, this is what we see and hear and smell, then we will take this through to the rest of our lives. So I think this is the basic, because without land, without decent soil, I don't think we have the food, we don't have the air, and we won't be able to build the fancy buildings that we are seeing now. So it goes back to the culture, goes back to our habits, and go back to the our living habits.
Okay, so this is my final question.
Yeah.
So what are you working on next?
Good question, Sandy. Thanks. I wasn't thinking too much about it, but no, I have. If it's immediate, if it's a priority, two things. Number one, there is a second book that I'm working on, comparing islands and the sustainable approach. It's comparative approach, study of islands around the world, and I'm comparing two different economies. So there's another book that I'm working on, and hopefully I get my time around that, and that's meant to be out over the next 3 months. And I guess the second thing is what UNNES and the Faculty of Economics and Business wants me to help out with in terms of the adjunct professorship. We've discussed with the Dean and the Vice Dean yesterday. I think there's plenty that we can do, but we have to prioritize and then just see in terms of resources and budget what can be done and what can be a quick win. Because I think that there are many things that we can do, yourself, Sandy, and myself, and with our colleagues. So let's start to work on that as well.
Okay, wish you all the best.
Thank you, Sandy, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Seck.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, thank you. So that's wrap up for our conversation. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode. I'm signing off. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.